They buried him before he died. Not with soil and tears. Not with a coffin and candles. They buried him with silence. With lies. With papers signed in the night when he was far away and had no one to call his name. His own blood did it. And they smiled at his funeral like people who had finally won something. But here is what they did not know. The man they buried was still breathing. And he was coming home. Before we begin, tell me where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments. And remember, not every quiet man is a weak man. Some men go silent because they are preparing. Sit back. This one will take everything from you. Emeka Okafor was the first son of Chief Sylvester Okafor of Onitsha. Chief Sylvester had built his wealth from nothing. He started with 1 lorry, then 2, then a transport company that moved goods across 3 states, then land, then a block of shops in the main market, then a cold room business, then a petrol station on the Onitsha Expressway. By the time Emeka was born, the Okafor name already carried weight in Anambra State. Chief Sylvester was a strict man. He did not believe in giving children too much comfort. He believed that a boy who was given everything would never learn how to fight for anything. So he sent Emeka to public school even though he could afford private. He made Emeka work in the transport office during holidays, counting manifests and talking to drivers. He made him understand early that money was not a gift. It was a result. Emeka grew up understanding this. He was quiet and serious. He did not chase women or spend money on things that had no value. He studied accounting at the University of Lagos, graduated well, and came home ready to work. His father was proud. His brother Chukwudi was not. Chukwudi was 3 years younger than Emeka. He was not lazy, but he was restless. He liked fast things, fast cars, fast money, fast women. He had charm that Emeka did not have. He could enter a room and make everyone laugh within 5 minutes. People liked Chukwudi quickly. They trusted Emeka slowly. And in a world that rewards charm before character, that difference mattered. For years, it did not cause a problem. Chief Sylvester was clear. Emeka was the first son. The business would pass to him. Chukwudi would be given capital to start his own venture. That was the plan. Then Chief Sylvester fell sick. It happened quietly, the way most terrible things do. A small cough that would not leave. Then weight loss. Then hospital in Enugu. Then hospital in Lagos. Then a doctor in Lagos who used words the family needed time to understand. Cancer. Stage 3. For months, the family gathered around the old man. Emeka moved back to Onitsha from Lagos where he had been managing the accounts for a logistics firm. He took over the day-to-day running of his father's business. He drove to the hospital. He sat with his father. He handled everything. Chukwudi was there too. But Chukwudi was busy doing what he had always done. Talking. He was always in the corridor laughing with relatives. Always on the phone. Always with a story that made people forget he was doing nothing. In those months, something shifted. Emeka did not see it happening. He was too busy working to notice. Chief Sylvester died on a Thursday morning in April. The funeral was large. People came from everywhere. Politicians, businessmen, church members, relatives Emeka had never seen in his life who appeared at the gate with red eyes and empty stomachs. Emeka carried everything. The arrangements, the caterers, the burial plot, the thank you speeches, the handling of his mother who had not spoken properly since the day her husband stopped breathing. He did not sleep for 5 days. On the 6th day, after the last guest had left and the compound was quiet again, Chukwudi asked to meet with Emeka in the sitting room. He came in with a man Emeka did not know. A thin man in a cheap suit carrying a brown envelope. Emeka assumed he was a lawyer. He was right. The man placed the envelope on the table and folded his hands. Emeka, Chukwudi said, "There is something you need to know about Papa's will." Emeka looked at his brother. His voice was calm. "What about it?" The lawyer opened the envelope and removed several pages. He read slowly. The transport company, the land in Onitsha, the shops in the main market, the cold room, the petrol station. All of it. Every single thing their father had built. Left to Chukwudi Okafor, the second son. Emeka sat there without moving. He listened until the lawyer finished reading. Then he looked at his brother. Chikuti's face was doing something strange. It was trying to look sad while smiling underneath. I know this is hard, Emeka, but you know Papa loved us both. He felt you had your own career in Lagos. He felt I needed this more because… Emeka raised his hand. Chikuti stopped. When did Papa make this will? The lawyer shifted slightly in his seat. 8 months ago. 8 months ago, Emeka repeated slowly. When Papa was in the hospital in Lagos. Yes. When he was on medication that made him sleep most of the day. The lawyer said nothing. Emeka looked at the will again. He looked at the signature. It was his father's handwriting, but something about the pressure of it was wrong. The old man's hands had been shaking badly in those final months. The signature looked too controlled. He looked at his brother. Chikuti, what did you do? Chikuti's face changed. The performance of sadness fell away completely. What I should have done a long time ago. Papa spent 30 years building something and you walked in after doing nothing and expected to take everything because of birth order. That is not how the world works anymore. Emeka stood up slowly. He wanted to shout. He wanted to grab his brother and shake answers out of him. He wanted to throw the papers across the room. But he did none of those things. He picked up his phone from the table. He picked up his car keys. And he walked out. He contested the will. Of course he did. He hired a lawyer in Awka. He hired another one in Lagos. He gathered evidence. He spoke to the nurses who had been with his father in those final months. He tracked down 2 people who had witnessed the signing and found that one of them could not fully remember the day. It should have been enough. It was not enough. Chikuti had prepared carefully. He had friends in the right places. He had an uncle, their father's younger brother, Efechi, who had always wanted a piece of the business and saw in Chikuti an easier target than Emeka. Uncle Efechi used his connections to slow down the court process. Documents were delayed. Hearing dates were postponed. One of Emeka's witnesses changed their statement. The case dragged for 2 years. By the end of it, Emeka had spent nearly everything he had saved. His reputation in certain circles had been damaged by stories Chikuti fed quietly to people. Stories that Emeka was greedy, that he had mismanaged his father's money, that the old man had been right to remove him. None of it was true. All of it spread. His mother, worn down by illness and grief and the pressure of watching her sons destroy each other, refused to speak on the matter. She had chosen peace over justice. Emeka understood. He did not blame her, but it still broke something in him. The day the final court ruling came, dismissing his case on a technicality, Emeka sat in his car outside the courthouse for a long time. He did not cry. He was past crying. He just sat there looking at the road ahead. Then he made a decision. He was going to leave. Not because he was defeated, because he understood now that fighting from inside was impossible. The people around Chikuti had closed every door. He could not win from here, but he could build from somewhere else. And when he came back, he would not come back fighting. He would come back having already won. He called a friend in Abuja who had connections to a construction company in Canada that was recruiting project managers. He sent his CV. He packed a bag. He told his mother quietly where he was going and made her promise to call him if she needed anything. He did not tell Chikuti. He did not tell anyone else. He simply left. That was 7 years ago. 7 years is a long time. Emeka arrived in Canada with almost nothing. His savings were mostly gone from the legal battle. He had his qualifications, his discipline, and his father's voice in his head telling him that a man who was given everything would never learn how to fight. Well, he had nothing, so he would fight. He started at the bottom of the construction company. Site assistant work. Physical work. Work that the version of him in Onitsha would never have imagined doing. But he did it without complaint. He learned. He observed. He asked questions when he did not understand things and kept quiet when he did. Within a year he had moved up. Within 3 years he was managing small projects. Within 5 years he was running a team of 40 people on a commercial development project worth 9 million Canadian dollars. He saved carefully. He invested quietly. He read everything he could about the business world. He remembered every lesson his father had ever taught him in that transport office. Every manifest, every contract, every handshake, and he applied those lessons in a new country with a different language of money. By the end of 7 years, Emeka Okafor had built something. Not as large as what his father had left, but real. A construction and project management company registered in Canada with 3 active contracts and a reputation for finishing on time. He had also changed in the way that time and hard work change a man. He was leaner. He wore a beard now, short and well-kept, that he had not had as a young man. He dressed differently, quieter, more international. He had lost the Onitsha boy softness from his face and replaced it with something harder and calmer. When he looked in the mirror, even he sometimes did not immediately recognize the man he had become. That gave him an idea. He did not announce his return. He told no one in Onitsha he was coming. He called his mother from Lagos and told her only that he was in Nigeria for business and would come to see her. He did not say when. He arrived in Onitsha on a Wednesday morning in a rented car with Lagos plates. He checked into a modest hotel in a part of town where no one from his family's circles would expect to see him. He had a plan. Over those 7 years, he had used some of his connections quietly and carefully. He knew that his father's old transport company, now under Chikwudi, had expanded. Chikwudi had taken the capital and goodwill of the Okafor name and grown it into a larger logistics operation. On the surface it looked successful. But Emeka had heard things through the years. People talk. Relatives who thought they were passing harmless information along to a distant relative in Canada did not realize they were feeding intelligence to someone who was preparing. He had heard that Chikwudi had borrowed heavily to fund an expansion that was not performing. He had heard that Uncle Afechi, who had helped Chikwudi steal the business, had now turned on him and was demanding a larger share of profits. He had heard that the staff at the company were unhappy, that drivers had not been paid on time for months, that the cold room was running at a loss. The Okafor business was wobbling, and Chikwudi needed investors. Emeka had read this. He had planned around it. Before returning to Nigeria, he had arranged through a Lagos-based financial intermediary, a man named Tund who knew how to move in quiet circles, to make it known in Onitsha business networks that a Canadian-based investor named Emmanuel Nwosu was looking at logistics and cold chain opportunities in Anambra State. Emmanuel Nwosu, a name close enough to his real one that it sat naturally in his mouth. Different enough that no one would connect it immediately. He had let the name circulate for 3 weeks before he arrived. By the time he checked into that hotel in Onitsha, 2 meetings had already been requested. One of them was from Chikwudi Okafor's company. The Okafor Logistics and Cold Chain office was on a busy street not far from the main market. It had expanded since Emeka had last been here. The frontage was wider. There was a new sign in corporate colors, blue and gold. A uniformed security man sat at the gate. Emeka studied it from his car before going in. His father had built that sign with 30 years of early mornings and difficult decisions. His brother had put his name on it. He breathed in once. Then he got out of the car. Inside, the reception area was clean but slightly tired. The kind of tired that money had been papering over for a while. A young receptionist looked up when he entered. "Good morning. I have an appointment. Emmanuel Nwosu. I am here to see Mr. Okafor." She smiled and asked him to sit. He sat. He looked around. Some of the staff he recognized. An older woman named Mama Yugo, who had been with his father for many years, was walking across the far end of the office with files in her hand. She had aged. She did not look happy. A younger man, maybe mid-20s, was arguing on the phone near the window. He was speaking in a low, frustrated voice about invoices that had not been settled. The office felt like a place holding its breath. After about 15 minutes, the receptionist called his name. He followed her down a short corridor and into a large office at the end. Chikwudi was standing by the window when Emeka entered. He turned around with the wide, easy smile he had always used when meeting someone he needed something from. He had put on weight. He was wearing an expensive agbada that did not sit right on his body. His eyes were sharp in the way that people who are worried try to look confident. "Mr. Nwosu, welcome to Okafor Logistics. I am Chikwudi Okafor. They shook hands. Emeka's voice was even, calm. His Canadian years had smoothed his accent slightly, enough to add distance. Thank you for having me. I have heard good things about this company. Chikwudi was delighted. He gestured to a seat, called for water, called for tea, asked the receptionist to close the door. Please sit, please sit. We are very happy to welcome serious investors to this table. Nigeria is the place to be right now, I can tell you. The opportunities here. Emeka sat down and let him talk. He watched his brother perform for 20 minutes without interrupting. He watched the way Chikwidi's hands moved when he was exaggerating figures. He watched the way his eyes moved to the door twice when certain numbers came up. He watched the small crack in the performance whenever the word expansion loan appeared in the conversation. His brother was drowning, and he needed this investor very badly. Emeka asked careful questions. Questions about fleet size, questions about cold room capacity, questions about the land assets, his father's land. Chikwudi answered smoothly, confidently. He spoke about the business as if he had built it himself, as if there was no transport office where a young boy had once counted manifests on Saturday mornings, as if there was no old man who had driven that first lorry with his own hands. Emeka took notes. He said he would need to review the financials and do a site visit before any further discussions. Chikwudi agreed immediately. Of course. We are an open book here. Whatever you need. We want the right partner at this table. Emeka nodded and stood. As they shook hands again, Chikwudi looked at him with that salesman warmth. Mr. Nwosu, I have a feeling this is the beginning of something very good. Emeka looked at his brother's face. I think so too, he said. He went to his mother that evening. She opened the door herself, and for a moment she simply stared at him. Then she put both hands over her mouth and began to cry without making any sound. He held her for a long time in the doorway. My son, you have come back. I told you I would, Mama. She was thinner than he remembered. The grief of the past 7 years had settled into her bones. But her eyes were still sharp. Still warm, still his mother's eyes. She sat him down and fed him. Ofonugbu with pounded yam the way he had not eaten in 7 years. She talked and he listened. She told him about the compound, about the business, about Chikwudi and his wife Adiz who had moved into their father's main house and redecorated everything. He asked her gently if Chikwudi treated her well. Her face answered before her words did. He provides, she said carefully. But this is not my house anymore. I can feel it every day. Tell me, Mama. She spoke for a long time. About the way Adiz, Chikwidi's wife, treated the house staff. About the time she overheard Chikwudi telling someone on the phone that the old woman needed to be moved to a smaller place so they could use her rooms. About the Christmas gathering where relatives had sat and praised Chikwudi while she sat quietly in the corner of what used to be her own home. Emeka's jaw tightened as she spoke, but he kept his voice soft. Mama, I need you to do something for me. What is it? I need you to not tell anyone I am here. Not yet. Not even people you trust. She looked at him. Emeka, what are you planning? He smiled slowly. The first real smile since he had arrived in Onitsha. Papa always said that a man who announces his plans before they are ready is a man who has already lost. His mother looked at him for a long time. Then she smiled too. She had not smiled like that in years. Over the next several days, Emeka moved carefully through Onitsha. He had his driver license and some business cards printed with the name Emmanuel Nwosu. He dressed simply. He visited the market. He drank tea in the small shops near the lorry park where his father's drivers had always gathered. He listened. Old men who had worked for his father for decades sat in those shops. Some of them had stayed on with Chikwudi. Some had left. They talked freely around Emmanuel Nwosu, the quiet Canadian investor who was interested in the logistics business. They did not look at his face and see Chief Sylvester's son. They saw a business visitor from abroad. And so they told him everything. They told him how Chikwudi had changed after he took over. How the first year was good, money spent, improvements made, staff gifts at Christmas. But then things shifted. The fleet maintenance became irregular. Drivers who had worked for Chief Sylvester for 15 years found themselves being talked to like strangers. A man named Emeka, and here one old driver paused and said the name softly, almost to himself, that Emeka, the first son, he was a good man, we still miss him. A man named Emeka had handled staff well. Known everyone's name. Remembered their children's ages. Chukwudi did not remember names. He remembered numbers. And lately even the numbers were not good. There was also the matter of Uncle Ifechi. Emeka heard this story in pieces from different people. Uncle Ifechi had helped Chukwudi take the business. In return, he had been given a minority share and a consultancy fee. But Ifechi was a hungry man. When he saw the business growing, he wanted more. He started threatening to expose the irregularities in the will if Chukwudi did not increase his share of profits. Chukwudi had been paying him off quietly for 3 years. It was draining the business. The expansion loan that Chukwudi had taken to grow the cold room operations was now sitting heavy on the company because the new contracts it was supposed to fund had not materialized. The company was behind on 3 loan repayments. The bank had sent 2 letters. Emeka sat with all of this information in his hotel room at night and organized it carefully in his mind. His brother had stolen a business. His brother had mismanaged that business. His brother was now desperate for investment money to plug holes that were getting wider. And his brother did not know that the investor sitting across from him was the man he had buried 7 years ago. There was one more person Emeka needed to understand. Adiz, Chukwudi's wife. He had never met her. She had come into the picture after he left. From what his mother had told him, Adiz was the one who had pushed hardest for his mother to be moved out of the main rooms of the compound. Adiz, who had removed his father's photographs from the sitting room wall and replaced them with large prints of herself and Chukwudi at parties and events. Adiz, who had told the house cook that the old recipes needed to change because she did not eat village food. He encountered her by accident on a Thursday afternoon. He had gone to the company for a second meeting, the site visit Chukwudi had promised. Chukwudi was 10 minutes late coming out to meet him, and Emeka was waiting in the reception area when a woman walked through the main door with 2 phones in her hand, speaking loudly to someone on one of them. She was tall, expensively dressed, and moving through the office like someone who owned it by marriage contract. She glanced at Emeka briefly in the way that people glance at things they have decided are not important. Then she looked away and continued her conversation. One of the staff, a young man carrying files, accidentally stepped into her path. She stopped. The young man apologized immediately. Adiz looked at him with an expression so cold it could have changed the weather. "Do you know how much these shoes cost?" she said. Her voice was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was quiet in the way that makes the target feel very small. The young man apologized again. "If you damage anything on my body," she said, "I will take it from your salary. All of it. Do you understand me?" The young man nodded and stepped aside quickly. Adiz walked on without another word. Emeka watched this from across the reception. He looked at the young man's face. The man was trying to arrange his expression back to neutral, but his hands were still. Emeka caught his eye. "Don't worry," Emeka said quietly. "It will not always be like this." The young man looked at him strangely, not understanding what he meant. Emeka said nothing more. But inside him, something had made a final decision. He spent his second week in Onitsha doing something very specific. He had brought with him from Canada the originals of certain documents his father had given him years before he died. Not a will. His father had not been a man who gave important documents without reason. And years ago, long before the sickness, he had given Emeka a sealed envelope and told him to keep it safe. "Open it only if something happens," the old man had said. "Only if someone tries to take what is yours." Emeka had opened it after the court case failed. He had read what was inside and then sealed it again carefully. He had kept it through 7 years of moving and rebuilding. It had sat in the bottom of a box through Canada winters and long work nights and the slow, patient years of becoming a different man. Inside was a handwritten letter from Chief Sylvester, dated 3 years before his death. Written clearly, in the firm handwriting of a healthy man who knew exactly what he was doing. In it, the old man stated plainly that his intention was for Emeka, his first son, to inherit the leadership of the business. He described specific assets by their names. He named Emeka directly. He described his reasoning. It was not a formal will, but it was evidence. Evidence that the signed will produced by Chikwudi represented a change of intent made when the old man was too ill to fully understand what he was signing. Emeka had always known this document existed. He had not used it in the first court case because his lawyer at the time had said it was not enough on its own. But that was 7 years ago. He was different now. He had different lawyers. He had different connections. And he had spent 7 years quietly building additional evidence alongside it. He had found the nurse who had been with his father when the will was signed. She was no longer working for the hospital and had moved to a different state. It had taken him 2 years to find her. When he did, she told him what she remembered, that the old man had been in a medicated fog that day and had signed papers without seeming to fully understand what they were. She had not said anything at the time because she was afraid of losing her job. She was no longer afraid. She had agreed to give a formal statement. He had also found the second witness from the original will signing. This man had changed his statement during the first court case under pressure from Uncle Ifechi. But Ifechi and Chikwudi had since fallen out. When Emeka contacted this man quietly through an intermediary, the man, tired and guilty after years of living with what he had done, agreed to tell the truth. Emeka brought all of this to a senior lawyer in Awka, a woman with a reputation for handling estate disputes without fear. He laid everything on her table. She read through it carefully. Then she looked at him over her glasses. "If what you are telling me is correct," she said, "then what happened to you was a fraud." "Yes," Emeka said. "I know. And you have been waiting 7 years to bring this back?" "I needed to be ready. Not just legally. In every way." She nodded slowly. She was a woman who had seen many things and was not easily surprised. But something in his calmness seemed to sit with her. "Give me 2 weeks," she said. "Then we will talk about next steps." The dinner was Chikwidi's idea. He had been pushing for it since their second meeting. He wanted to move things along. Emmanuel Nwosu seemed serious. Seemed like a man who had real money. The kind of investor who could solve several problems at once. "He wants to host you," the intermediary Tund told Emeka by phone. "At his home. He says he wants you to see how serious he is about the partnership." His father's home, Emeka thought. "He wants to host me in my father's house." He agreed. He arrived on a Friday evening. The compound was lit up. Chikwudi had arranged it carefully, a display of prosperity for the investor. Good food, cold drinks, soft music. 3 other businessmen Chikwudi wanted to impress were also invited. The house had changed completely inside. His father's heavy wooden furniture was gone. Everything was modern, glass and chrome, the kind of interior design that cost money and said nothing. The photographs were indeed gone from the walls. The wall where his father's portrait had hung was now covered by a large abstract painting. His mother was not present. He had asked about her discreetly and been told she retired early. He understood. Adiz played hostess with the particular skill of a woman who had practiced it. She was warm to the guests, generous with compliments, and managed to make everything feel important without saying anything of substance. She refilled Emmanuel Nwosu's glass with a wide smile. "We have heard so much about you," she said. "Chikwudi is very excited about this possible partnership. I can see you have built something impressive here," Emeka said, looking around the room. Adiz beamed. "We have worked very hard," she said. "This family has given everything to get here." Emeka looked at her. "Everything," he repeated. "Yes," she said, not hearing what was underneath the word. He looked around the room again, at the walls, at the furniture, at the art that replaced his father's memory. He nodded slowly. "I am sure," he said. During the dinner, Chikwudi performed. He told business stories with the confidence of a man who had forgotten what lying felt like because he had done it for so long. He spoke about his vision for the company, about how he had carried his father's legacy forward, about the Okafor name and what it meant in this state. Every time the name Emeka came up, the original first son, Chikwudi steered around it quickly, a brief cloud passing over his face before the sun came back. He does not feel safe even saying my name, Emeka thought. Good. After dinner, Chikwudi pulled Emmanuel aside for a private conversation on the veranda. He dropped his performance slightly. His voice became more direct. I will be honest with you, he said. We are at a stage where the right partner can unlock the next level for us. We have the assets. We have the reputation. We just need someone to come in with us. How much are you looking at? Emeka asked. Chukwudi named a figure. It was close to what the outstanding loan repayments and operational gaps required. Emeka nodded as if considering it. What are you offering in return? Equity, Chukwudi said. Proper seat at the table. Emeka looked out at the compound. The old mango tree his father had planted was still there near the wall. That at least had not been removed. Let me think, Emeka said. I will come back to you in 1 week. Chukwudi pressed his hand. Of course. Take your time. But not too long. He laughed. We have a good thing here. I would not want another investor to come in ahead of you. Emeka smiled. No, he said. I do not think that will happen. Before everything came together, there was one more conversation he needed to have. Uncle Ifechi. He was the one who had used his connections to close the court doors 7 years ago. The one who had pressured a witness to change a statement. The one who had helped a nephew steal from a nephew. He lived in a small estate on the outskirts of Onitsha. He was in his late 60s now. He had made some money through the years, but not as much as he had hoped. Chukwudi had been feeding him just enough to keep him quiet and not enough to make him feel satisfied. Emeka sent him a message through a number Ifechi would not recognize. It said simply, I have information about the Okafor will that affects you directly. I think we should meet. Come alone. Emmanuel Nwosu. Ifechi came. He arrived at the hotel cafe nervous and trying not to show it. He was a small man who had always walked in the shadow of his older brother's success. He had a thin face and careful eyes. He sat down across from Emmanuel Nwosu and studied him. Who are you? He said. A man who knows what you did. Ifechi's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Emeka leaned forward slightly. His voice was very quiet. The will was fraudulent. You know it. I know it. And in approximately 8 days, my lawyer will be filing a fresh suit with evidence that the courts have not seen before, including a statement from someone who was in the room. Ifechi's face changed. You? Emeka watched him. It took Ifechi a few seconds to reach across the years and the beard and the different clothes and find the young man he remembered. His mouth opened slowly. Emeka? Emeka said nothing. Ifechi looked around the room as if checking whether this was a trap. Then he looked back at the man in front of him. You came back. I came back. The silence between them held several years and several sins. Ifechi tried to gather himself. He sat up straighter. Whatever you think happened, Uncle, Emeka said quietly. I am not here to negotiate with you. I am here to give you a choice. Ifechi waited. When this goes to court, everyone will know everything. Your name will be in those documents. Your role will be clear. You can go through that with whatever you have left of your reputation. Or, he paused, you can come forward now and tell the truth before the suit is filed. Cooperate fully with the process. In return, I will make sure the focus of the case stays where it belongs. Ifechi stared at him. You're giving me a way out? I'm giving you a choice. There is a difference. A long silence passed. Outside the cafe window, Onitsha moved on with its afternoon business. Lorries on the road. Women with goods on their heads. A city that had continued without him for 7 years. Ifechi looked down at the table. Your father, he said quietly. Chief Sylvester. He was a better man than I ever gave him credit for. Emeka did not answer. I was greedy, Ifechi said. I was always greedy. And Chukwudi came to me when I know the story, Emeka said. I have known the story for 7 years. Ifechi looked at him with something old and tired in his eyes. What do you want me to do? The meeting was arranged for a Monday morning. Emeka called it through his intermediary as a final investor presentation. He told Chukwudi to make sure all senior company stakeholders were present. He said he had made his decision and wanted to announce it formally. Chukwudi was thrilled. He called the office. He set up the conference room. He brought in Adiz. He called the company accountant, the operations manager, and 3 senior staff members who had been with the business for years. Mama Yugo was in the room. She sat near the back with her files on her lap, the way she always sat in meetings, watching everything. Emeka arrived at 10 o'clock. He wore a simple dark suit. No tie. He carried a briefcase that contained several folders of documents. He walked into the conference room and greeted everyone calmly. He shook hands with the people he did not know and with the people he did. When he shook Mama Yugo's hand, she looked at him for a moment too long. Something crossed her face. He held her gaze briefly and gave a small nod. Her eyes went wide. She said nothing. He sat at the head of the table. Chukwudi sat across from him, relaxed and confident, the way a man sits when he thinks a deal is about to go his way. "Mr. Nwosu," Chukwudi said, "we are glad you chose us." Emeka opened his briefcase. He removed the folders and placed them on the table. "Before I speak about the investment," he said, "there is something I need to clarify." Chukwudi nodded. "Of course. My name is not Emmanuel Nwosu." The room went still. He looked around the table. At the accountant. At the operations manager. At the senior staff who had worked here when his father was alive. At Adiz, whose smile had frozen in place. At Chukwudi, whose face had not yet understood what was happening. "My name is Emeka Okafor. I am the first son of Chief Sylvester Okafor. And I have come home." For 3 seconds, no one spoke. Then Mama Yugo pressed her hand to her mouth and began to cry quietly. Chukwudi stood up so fast his chair scraped back against the floor. What is this? What are you?" "I am your brother," Emeka said. "And I am the rightful owner of this company. Which is why, as of this morning, my lawyer has filed a suit in the Anambra High Court to challenge the fraudulent will that removed me from my inheritance 7 years ago." He placed the first folder on the table. This contains a signed statement from the nurse who was present when the will was witnessed. She has described the condition Papa was in when he signed those papers. He placed the second folder on the table. This is a letter written by Papa himself, 3 years before his death, in his own handwriting, stating his clear intention for this business. He placed the third folder on the table. This is a statement from the second witness to the original will. The one who changed his statement during my first court case 7 years ago. He has now corrected the record. He placed the final folder on the table. And this contains a full cooperation statement from Uncle Afechi. The room was completely silent. Adiz's chair scraped back slowly. Chukwudi looked at the folders. Then at Emeka. His mouth opened. No words came. "I do not want to destroy this company," Emeka said. "Papa built it. Carries his name. Whatever you have done to it, it still carries his name. I want to save it. But I will not save it for you. I will save it for what it was meant to be." He looked around the room at the staff members. At the faces of people who had worked for his father and then worked for his brother and now were hearing something that would change everything. To everyone in this room who has worked here honestly, you have nothing to fear. Your positions are safe. Your salaries will be reviewed and corrected. He looked at Mama Yugo. She was still crying silently. "I remember all of you," he said quietly. "I have always remembered." Then he looked at Chukwudi one final time. His brother's face was doing something complicated. The charm was completely gone. What was underneath was smaller and more frightened. "Brother," Emeka said, "you had 7 years to be what Papa hoped you would be. You spent those years taking instead of building. Taking from the business. Taking from the staff. Taking from Mama." Chukwudi said nothing. "We will let the court decide what happens next. But it will happen in the open this time. With all the truth on the table." He closed his briefcase. He stood up. He was done. The court case moved faster this time. With 3 new witnesses, a handwritten letter from the deceased, and a cooperation statement from the man who had helped engineer the original fraud, the legal picture was very different from 7 years ago. Chukwudi hired lawyers. Of course he did. He argued. He delayed where he could. But the delays were shorter this time. The walls he had built with favors and connections had weakened over 7 years of mismanagement and the fallout with Uncle Afechi. When people saw which way the wind was turning, some of those connections quietly stepped back. The ruling came 4 months after Emeka had walked into that conference room and said his name. The original will was set aside. The fraud was formally established. The Okafor assets were ordered returned to their rightful inheritance structure under Emeka as first son. Chukwudi did not go to prison. Emeka had not pushed for that. He had told his lawyer clearly, "I want what is mine. I do not want my brother's life. Let the law deal with him as it sees fit. But I will not be the one to lock the door on him." Chukwudi and Adiz vacated the main compound. The house was quieter than it had been in years. The chrome furniture was gone. The abstract painting came down. His mother walked through the main sitting room on the day they returned and stood in the center of it for a long time without saying anything. Then she said, "Hang your father's portrait back." Emeka had already brought it. He hung it that afternoon in the same place it had always been. His father's steady eyes looking out over the room his money had built. Not everything ended cleanly. Some of the relatives who had stood with Chukwudi when the tide was running his way now came to Emeka with explanations and apologies. He listened to them carefully. He gave some of them grace. He gave others the kind of polite distance that was its own message. Uncle Ifechi came to the compound one Saturday morning. He was smaller than Emeka remembered. Or perhaps Emeka had simply grown. He stood at the gate for a while before being let in. He came into the sitting room and sat down. He was carrying a small cola, not the way older men did when they came to ask for something important. He placed it on the table. Emeka looked at it. "Your father's younger brother is not supposed to come to you like this," Ifechi said. "But I have done what a younger brother should never do. I helped someone take from you. I used the name of this family to do it." He looked down at his hands. "I am an old man. I do not have many years left. I do not want to carry this thing to my grave." Emeka looked at him for a long moment. His father's voice came to him. Not the old man's actual words. Just the way he had always handled things. Firmly. Without cruelty. With the understanding that you could hold people accountable without becoming hard. "Put the cola on the table," Emeka said. "And call Mama. She should be here for this." Ifechi looked up. Emeka nodded slowly. "We will do this properly." The company took 18 months to stabilize. The expansion loan was renegotiated with the bank using the new ownership structure as collateral. The outstanding salaries were cleared. 3 drivers who had left during Chukwidi's difficult years were brought back. The cold room was repaired properly, not patched with short money but fixed. Emeka brought in 2 people from his Canadian network to help modernize the operations. He did not replace the existing management team. He sat with them, learned what each person understood about the business, and built around what was already there. He gave Mama Yugo a title she had deserved for years. Senior Operations Coordinator. She cried again when he told her. He told her to stop crying because they had work to do. She laughed. Then she went back to work. He also did one thing that people did not expect. He found the young man who had been berated by Adiz in the reception area on that Thursday afternoon. The one who had been humiliated over the shoes. His name was Tebena. He was 26 years old and had been with the company for 2 years. Emeka called him into the office. Tebena came in looking nervous. "I saw what happened that day in reception," Emeka said. "Before you knew who I was." Tebena looked down. "How you handled yourself, the way you carried yourself after. I noticed that." He offered him a position in the operations coordination team. With training. With a proper career path. Tebena sat very still for a moment. "Sir," he said. "How did you notice me? You were just a visitor." Emeka smiled. "I was paying attention," he said. "I have always paid attention to how people behave when they think nothing important is watching. They say time heals. That is not completely true. Time does not heal. Time gives you enough distance to carry the wound without it stopping you from walking." Emeka Okafor had walked a long way. He had walked from a courtroom in Aka to a cold Canadian winter. From a site office on a commercial development to a boardroom back in the city where his father had built something from nothing. He had walked carrying his father's letter in a sealed envelope for 7 years. He did not come back angry. He came back prepared. And there is a lesson in that which is older than this story. A man who responds to betrayal immediately, in the heat of it, will often make the wound worse. He will reach for the nearest weapon. He will say the wrong things to the wrong people. He will give his enemy the picture of him they need to tell their version of events. But a man who waits, who goes away and builds himself into something that cannot be easily dismissed, that man comes back on his own terms. He does not ask permission. He does not beg for justice. He arrives with the truth already assembled and simply opens the door. Chukwudi had buried his brother with silence and forged papers. But you cannot bury a man who is still breathing and still building. You can only delay him, and sometimes the delay is the gift. Because the Emeka Okafor who returned to Onitsha after 7 years was not the same young man who had walked out of that courthouse. He was harder. He was wiser. He was patient in the way that only suffering and time can teach a person to be patient. He had become someone his father would have recognized. Not because he had won, but because of how he had won. That is the story of the man who came back. And to everyone watching who is in the middle of their long road, who has been wronged and displaced and told that the door is closed, I want you to hear this clearly. The door being closed is not the end of the story. It is the end of the first chapter. Go and build. Go and prepare. Go and become the person the story needs you to be when you return. Because you will return. And when you do, they will have no answer for you. Drop a comment if the story touched something in you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. This has been Folktales with Charlie. I will see you in the next story.